Hello and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, ask a guest to choose a Doctor Who story and their favourite things about it, and I have to watch, commentate along and guess what those favourite things might be.
Hello Toby, and hello to the audience. My name's Paul Griggs, Doctor Who fan, sometimes podcaster, and you may have seen me at the odd convention interviewing people on stage. I'm here today at the Little Theatre in Birkenhead, where I've been appearing in a production of Some Moths Do Have 'Em, which has a connection to the episode that Toby is about to watch, but more about that later. Now, before we go any further, an apology to Toby for quite how long it's taken me to put this together. He asked me to take part in this podcast during November 2020, and today, as I record this, we've just seen David Tennant in Off Destination Skaro. So I hope the 3-year wait has been worth it. When I asked Toby what episodes were available, my first choice, the episode that was transmitted on the day I got married in 2006, had already been taken, sadly, but I was shocked to find that from the same year, School Reunion was still available. Shocking! It's a cracking episode. Why wasn't it snapped up straight away? In my opinion, this was the point that the newly returned Doctor Who really started to acknowledge its past. Yes, we'd seen Autons and Daleks, but it was the first time a character had properly returned. And what a character! I'd been a big fan of Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith for, well, as long as I've considered myself a Doctor Who fan. Her introduction in The Time Warrior is my birth story. That's something Toby and I share. And I have vivid recollections of her in K9 and Company and The Five Doctors. And of course, she appeared in an episode of Some Moths Do Have 'Em. So it seemed appropriate to do this recording here. For a number of years, I was involved with her American fan club, the Elizabeth Sladen Information Network, and I had the honour of interviewing her more than once. So it was terribly exciting to have her come back for School Reunion and appear on our screens as Sarah Jane Smith once more. So Toby, it's over to you, and what do you think of School Reunion?
Well, welcome everybody to this edition of Happy Times and Places. What a joy to see. Paul recorded his contribution on video and did a few nifty tricks and some picture-in-picture superimposition, which is of absolutely no use to any of you listening to this, as most do as a podcast. But those videos will be held in store and put on my YouTube channel and on my Patreon, probably in the other way around, at some point. So your travails are not wasted. Paul, nice to see him. He apologised to me for taking, 3 years? He said he was recording that in November 23, which is interesting because I've been slightly delayed setting up this laptop because it was showing the wrong date and time, and it was showing November 23, and I've just changed it to what today is, which is in June 25. So even my computer was where Paul was. That's weird. So I think, yes, where the landscape of Doctor Who has completely changed since Paul, he was saying, I've just seen David Tennant. Well, we've seen David Tennant come and go again. So apologies to Paul now for taking so long to record this, but that's the nature of Happy Times and Places. There are many in the bank from people who recorded some during lockdown, I'm sure, so you may have some to come which say, I'm recording here from a cupboard where I've just got scampi fries and a note from my wife who was visiting her mother when suddenly we none of us could come home again. Anyway, so here we are as we approach 100 Happy Times and Places. I thought it worth conjuring a few special episodes before the actual 100 mark. So I've recently done The Invisible Enemy, which is the story that was broadcast when I started to watch the show. It's my first story. This episode is very special to me for a number of reasons. Interesting that Paul and I are both share the same birth story, and this is one that we'll bond on I'm sure, on several different fronts. But it's extra special to me, of course, because it features in quite heavily in the climax of my one-man show, Moths ate my Doctor Who scarf, and I have to say probably gives it its heart a little bit, which is an important aspect of the show, and it's based on something that did happen about my son watching School Reunion and my reaction to it. But some lead-in. I mean, I wasn't particularly looking forward to this episode, not because I don't love Sarah Jane, and not because K9 is not important to me. As I've said, he was on my first ever episode, but I sort of didn't believe it. It seemed to me Sarah Jane and K9 coming back, I just seemed to be lazy journalism going, well, this year we've had the Daleks, the Cybermen are coming back, and yeah, there's going to be an episode with Sarah Jane and K9. I just thought somebody had Googled who comes back into Doctor Who. A bit like when people go, who should be the new Doctor Who? Let's choose somebody who's been in it before, Billy Piper. And of course, as we know, that nobody would ever do such a silly thing as that. But it just seemed to me a sloppy journalistic, put two and two together and make five just to make up a headline. So I was really shocked when it did happen. And like any self-loathing fan, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm going to enjoy seeing Sarah Jane again, but what? No, hang on. So I'm sure we'll talk about that during the episode because, of course, we know what happened subsequently as well. And suddenly Elizabeth Sladen, in her later years was top-lining a children's BBC television series. You couldn't write that, and if you did, you'd say it was unbelievable. How wonderful! But as I say, aside from the superb way it turned out for Elizabeth Sladen, who, unlike Paul, I never actually met. This is a story that has all sorts of ramifications, and that I really do like. But I think as a story on its own, irrespective of the fact, I don't think it's just good because of the headline news. I think it's good throughout. I think Toby Whithouse has a great voice for Doctor Who. So let's see as we go through. It's not perfect. That's interesting. I think it's always worth noting why we forgive stories that we like for things that we wouldn't forgive stories we don't like. There is a certain amount of double standards or just personal taste, which means that I think I'm always, although I do think some stories are objectively good and some stories are objectively bad, and yet when I see people confidently citing that opinion, I go, you can't say that but then there is such a thing as objectively good direction. Is there? Right? Yes, there must be, but then some people will comment on something being badly directed where I think, no, that's obviously well directed. Oh, who knows? So all I can give you is my opinion and pretend that it's worth more than people who don't give their opinion. It's worth your time now. That's all we're doing, I guess. Because I never trust people who say, yes, well, that's my opinion. Yeah, well, I could give you my opinion on golf, but it's based on no knowledge or ability with golf whatsoever. So it is my opinion, but it's absolutely worthless. I hope you don't think mine, nor indeed Paul's opinion on School Reunion is worthless, and I hope it chimes with yours. Or I hope where the differences are, you can see why I have my differences, but why to you my observations on why they're good are Tommy rot and not worth the time of day, or worth pushing back on, or worth just giving you to something to scream at in the park as you walk your dog or whatever you're doing when you listen to this. Talking of taking the dog for a walk, let's get him out of mothballs and take him to the School Reunion, which is a brilliant title as well, because I thought, I got it in my head because we know what School Reunion means. I thought that's what the story would be set around, of course, subconsciously, because that's what the title does. But it's not. It's a reunion in a school, but it's not. There's no school reunion as such. Which is very good. And it's not an attack of the killer this or the Krillitanes of death. School Reunion, and I think that's an apt title. So let's head down. The bell's gonna go. Enjoy your break. I will talk to you during it. And here we go as we go to BBC iPlayer to press play on School Reunion. Well, and of course, Anthony Head had already graced Doctor Who. He was one of the first sort of big names to hit Big Finish, which made me go, oh, this Big Finish thing, they might be up for something. It's all right. It's all well and good to get doctors, but to get to, but then he also seemed quite obvious because we knew he was sympathetic to genre because he'd done Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but now he was back in the UK, so he seemed actually an obvious choice, Anthony Head. But is no less welcome for it. But I think I would have been surprised if Anthony Head hadn't appeared in Doctor Who, as he had genre credentials, so he could give our new, as it were, show a bit of credibility from across the pond, whilst being based over here, but also knowing exactly what to do. And boy, he knows exactly what to do. It's a brilliant opening. I love the angles there, and also pretty shocking is that the opening scene is a young child getting eaten by her headmaster. I love it when Doctor Who does something a bit forbidden, but not in a way that's, grotesque or exploitation-y or whatever. Gosh, he looks so young, doesn't he? So what a great open is you've established that Anthony Head, who knows exactly how to play this stuff, and I love it when Doctor Who takes things that sort of appeal to the child in you. A school is the setting, the headmaster is the bad guy, and the way it does, poor thin child, and then the brilliance of having the Krillitane as just a shadow through the door, that he's done that wonderful, is he almost breaking the fourth wall, looks through to check that the coast is clear to eat the child. It's arch, it's funny, and yet it's not phony, and that is quite a hard line to tread. To do the humour in Doctor Who, you always have to be careful not to puncture the reality of it. All these kids will be 100 years old now, won't they? James Hawes is the director. I did like his work on Empty Child Doctor Dances Series 1, so I was happy to see him back. So, and this is Milo, isn't it? I like the name Milo. Milo is one of the tweeners. I wanted to call one of my children Milo, but the tweeners paid to that. I like the name Milo. Milo Clancy, of course. So he's not Doctor Who's first Milo. You don't toot, he's not. But Milo is played by an actor called Clem Tibber, who the wife subsequent to this, Catherine, when I moved to London to be with her, she was in a short film with Sean Dingwall and this young man, and it was Clem Tibber, but he wasn't a school child anymore, and obviously it hadn't been very long. But children grow so people grow so quickly between being 12 and 18 or whatever they are. But this is the first of the slight issues with the show, isn't it? Is that Milo sort of disappears. There's a reference to Milo's let me down, but we never quite get the conclusion of Milo's story. He's set up as this kind of mystery child that piques the Doctor's interest, but we never actually see him again. So that's a sign of a script that's post production that's had to sort of chop stuff about a little bit. So it is one of those things. And if it was a story you didn't like, you go, yeah, what happened to the bloody brainy kid that does all of that stuff? But I don't mind, because the throwaway line from Mr. Washington sort of at least dispenses with him. It's not Mr. Washington, is it? The actor is Eugene Washington. Chips being the kid, because bear in mind that Jamie Oliver at around this time was trying to sort out school dinners, and which seemed like a very sensible policy, but then of course it gets the backlash of how dare a millionaire, comfortable metropolitan elite telling people what they can give their children at school, and of course people going, no, but schools should be there giving people decent food, not and of course I'm from a time, because I'm very old, because even the school children in this are old now, where you didn't have more than, there was no choice of what you ate, and you asked for a large, a medium, or a small, and you ate all of it, and you wouldn't leave the table until you did. And is the world in any better place now that children have been given choice? Certainly not. And I'm aware that often we invoke things that happened from our time that we didn't like, because we think if we had to put up with them, so do the kids. But I'm not. There's nothing I won't eat, and I do credit it with the fact that I didn't have a choice. I don't eat stuff out of choice now, but there's nothing that I find unpalatable, as it were. And that's basically because I had to eat what I was given. But maybe that's just me being lucky to have a palate that finds most things allowable, and other people might find it really a struggle, and I should have sympathy with them rather than being snooty about fussy eaters. But I am what I am. So I like this whole sort of gang setup. It does feel like there's a team here. It is a bit Scooby Gang. It's not unlike Buffy, actually, is it? Anthony Head's presence is not the only, and I love Buffy, so that's fine. And I mean, this is absolutely outrageous. What's she doing? She does that, doesn't it? This is Caroline Berry, by the way, who is Welsh and very Welsh. I know Caroline. She was one of the first people to sort of sign to offer to do Who's Round, and she became Facebook friends of mine, even though we never actually met at that point. And then when I did interview her, she was actually down the road in Corrie with Shez, and I could have actually interviewed her in person, but I never did. In fact, I don't think Caroline and I have ever met in person, but we have chatted quite a lot. But she's a busy and fantastic actress, and I love her timing on. So she does that, which again is slightly outrageous. And yet I accept that joke because I think it's funny enough, and it doesn't spoil anything. But similar jokes of that kind I might not accept. Anyway, I do like this piece of music. Nobody ever talks about this, and I don't think it's ever on any of the albums either. The music for when they're typing into the machine, which is a repeated refrain for it throughout, and I rather like it. And here she is. I could not believe it, because especially bringing her back and K9. I mean, that is an arch tie to what had gone before, and I didn't particularly want that. I would never want Doctor Who to be rebooted. I would never want it to deliberately wipe the slate clean or ignore anything that's gone in the past. But this seemed like a bit too much. And this is Rod Arthur, who's a lovely actor who's done quite a lot, but who, a friend of mine, I think he has a house in Manchester, or did, would stay in his house sometimes, or rented his house off him. So again, it's another sort of weird Doctor Who tie for me, but I suppose we all have them, but we all see patterns in things that aren't there. And isn't it just the thing that there's an actor in an episode and he's somebody a friend sort of vaguely has a connection with him? It's not like I sat next to him on the bus, or he married my mother. Beautiful, again, Murray Gold doing some lifting here, which I'm absolutely fine by. David Tennant doing some beautiful acting here, and Elizabeth Sladen lighting up the screen. I love Sarah Jane Smith. Now, obviously, one has to get over the fact that they do slightly reframe the Doctor's relationship with Sarah here in order for the metaphor or the theme of the episode to stand up in the way that they want it to, that Rose gets a glimpse of what it's like when she's no longer the companion. But to try and reframe it as a relationship between Sarah and the Doctor is a bit of a square peg in a round hole, and again the sort of thing that I would ordinarily really push back hard against. But what it does is it facilitates the scenes that we get, and that's great. He's so happy, which is lovely, which means that anything that I might have had misgivings about, I kind of forgive, because I suppose in the way that the Deadly Assassin, I forgive the reframing of the Time Lord slightly, because the dramatic consequences of it all are of extreme value. Good scenes, good characters, good jokes, and I think that's what you get here. And here we have Kenny, who's going to prove to be important to the whole to the whole episode, to get the final hero moment that he does, and I'm sure we will talk about him a little bit later. But yes, here's Eugene Washington as the bad teacher. He's got a fantastic stare, hasn't he? And he did a few. He was one of those actors. I think he's on the commentary on the Red Button. Do you remember that time when we had commentary on the Red Button? We also had commentary on the DVD, and they were different. I love all these. They Dutch angles. To make a school of all places, seem suddenly a little creepy. This is adds more to the Buffy and this Scooby Gang sort of investigating stuff. But I absolutely love it, and I think Doctor Who being set in a school is so witty. Because it's invoking everything that takes us as adult viewers back to what Doctor Who felt like when we watched it when it was younger, although it didn't, because Doctor Who wasn't really always in a school, although obviously the first episode is in a school. But it just seems to tie in all those things, our childhood, the things about being a school kid. I think it really rewards an adult viewer here, the fact that it brings Sarah back as well, but is also an episode that's great for new viewers, because new viewers tend to be younger. It's set in a school, which many of them are in a school. So I think it works on all sorts of levels. Poor old Mickey is a bit of a Burke, but he's a lovable Burke, and I think his performance has vastly improved from Series 1, where I think he had adopted a tone. It's funny, Russell kind of denied this when I interviewed him. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but I think he was, well, not wanting to speak for his actor, but also I know I was, I wasn't going to be given anything that might hint that nothing was not part of the plan, and that's absolutely fair enough. But I do see a difference in the performances between Mickey Series 1 and Mickey Series 2, and that's fine. They're finding their feet. I absolutely love this scene. I mean, I love the fact that everyone's separately investigating in the school. I think Elizabeth Sladen is so good in this, and I cannot watch this scene without a tear in my eye and a lump in my throat. I find that really bizarre, because I didn't grow up with Sarah Jane Smith. I don't remember her from when I was a kid, but in fact, the first experience I had with her was K9 and Company and the Five Doctors. She is so good in it. They are both so good in this. I love this scene. It's beautifully shot as well. Well done, Joe. So, I mean, I got old, she says. Oh, it's the sort of dignity of that. But there's an edge as well, because she's like, you went. It's so perfectly pitched, same. And the little laugh she does, she's full of good things like that. So that's a reminder of the Elizabeth Sladen of times gone by, where a line will say one thing and she'll give it something else that will make absolute sense, but that will just make it sing or resonate or bounce off in different directions. A bit of happiness where the sun is, a bit of humorous resignation to something sad or dangerous or whatever. I mean, and that "hi, nice to meet you" is a little bit kind of. They've been told to sort of play into this, right? You two are going to have a sort of bitch fight, which is very kind of 21st century Russell T Davies sort of vibe. That again you have to kind of force into it a little bit. But I've got a rubber mallet for that square peg, and I'm banging it into the round hole, because everything it facilitates is really good. And School Rats is a good thing, Dice. Oh, Sarah Jane bitchfest. I mean, this is it's like we have the Daleks and the Cybermen bitching at the end of the season. We have Sarah Jane and Elizabeth Sladen and Billy Rose Tyler and Elizabeth and Sarah Jane. Listen to me, getting them all mixed up. I'm Billy Pipering my Rose Tylers. I'm Elizabeth Sladening my Sarah Jane Smiths. But that's maybe because I got old. And as I get older, actually, this speaks to me quite a lot. And I'm in a play at the moment, and I'm the oldest member of the cast, and we did a cast picture, and I looked at it and I went, oh yeah, this is the photo where, a few years' time, when you all get back together and you look at that photo and you go, oh, what was that guy called? Yeah, Toby, he was great. What happened? Oh no, he died. Oh yeah, well, and you initially go, oh, that's, and then you go, well, no, that makes sense. Because this is brilliant. What goes on in the school after dark, invoking the rats in the science department, because a big moment in any school kid's development is the sort of dissection thing where I think suddenly you're feeling a bit like an adult, and oh god, you're touching a dead thing, and it does feel like an important step in your development. I think the that you're being trusted with a cadaver and being confronted with the reality of life and death, and also there's the aesthetic thing about a freeze-dried dead rat. But yeah, and the teachers living in the school after dark. That's a wonderful kind of thing from nightmare storybooks, or canteen school lunchtime canteen gossip or whatever. And here we have K9 looking a bit knackered, and again I'm pleased they decided not to update the model. He's retro, but he works. I sort of wonder how he looks to a young person, but nobody questioned it, did they? And he's all rusty and knackered, so that's okay. And they even get John Leeson back to do the voice, which I think is vital and important and lovely. And I love that story for these actors involved and I love the use of the moon. There's so many good moon shots here. The Krillitanes are sort of space bats or whatever, but they're beautifully shot and rendered, and they have that great thing of when you need them to give a performance, they can turn into a marvelous actor, and when you need them to look like scary monsters, they can flap about and be silhouetted by the moon. There's a lot of and there's a sub story about chips. But also I like the fact that Mickey kind of has everybody's number in this, which I rather like as well. And it's important that he's not just the sort of thick comic relief, but actually he's sometimes the one that cuts through all the crap, and he's funny. So I much preferred him as a character in series. Well, he'd sort of improved by. He gets a lot to do in World War III, doesn't he? They behave with him fairly quickly, because he's obviously tonally slightly askew. I mean, he is slightly patronised as well, but that's okay. You need to have a character who's, if it can't just be a load of clever, capable smartasses. Otherwise, you're watching, the West Wing or something. I love the West Wing, but you need in these situations, you need characters who can get into trouble and can get it wrong, but also can sometimes show up our highfalutin characters for what they are. So there's a nice bouncy dynamic. I think that's fine. And that's that. And I do think that this is an important part of the Doctor's relationship with the companion, which I think we've kind of lost these days, because everybody always wants the actors back. But when you go, you're gone. And yes, it was nice to have everybody back for the 5 Doctors, and that was a special sort of contrived situation. But you sacrifice a life of excitement and adventure for an ordinary, in inverted commas, life. And most people in the end choose the ordinary life, because actually ordinary life is fine and good, and you can only take so much craziness. But you go back to your ordinary life changed and appreciative that the universe is a bigger place, and and all the things we learn from Doctor Who about people who aren't the same as us, and the importance of imagination and this, that, and the other. So yes, you don't go back to your life as you were. You are changed, but not changed to the extent that your past history's been wiped out, and you're now responsible for a baby you never knew anything about before. But let's not get into that. You can judge. But now, of course, regular characters can come back a lot, and now they'd all just be asked to work for Unit. Who we would see once a season or whatever. And I do think there is something to be said for the fact that it's a sacrifice, so that we really feel the absence of a companion where they go, because we know we will never see them again. Now, television is different these days, and of course I totally understand the need to bring back much loved characters, but it does feel like a bit less of a wrench then. Or you've always got in the back of your mind, Well, yeah, but we'll see them again, even if they die now. So this Anthony Head is really, really good, and all it takes is a bit of slick back hair, and he knows how to do the sort of alien space acting stuff. He's really excellent value. Oh, and I do think that's funny. I'm the Tin Dog, and Noah Clark does this very well. I don't always think he's on top of it performance wise, but I think a bit like Sergeant Benton, when he's the sort of hapless but lovable guy doing his best, I think we really, really warm to him. But yes, this is and this about Rose realizing that she's the centre of the Doctor's life, but won't always be, and that's a really interesting rite of passage as well. And when you're young and think you're invincible, that's what Rose is right now. We've all been there, and I think there's something important about realizing humans decay. You won't always be like that, and it's a thing that gradually comes upon you, and you have to sit with, and it's hard to sit with. It's so this is saying something really, really interesting in a sort of Buffy style caper adventure with a side order of school chips, and I rather like. I think so. I think there's a lot going on here. I think Toby Whithouse has done a really, really good job with the brief. There's a lot to fit in here. And they could have kind of phoned it in after, well, we've got Sarah Jane and K9. The rest of it, you wouldn't expect necessarily to deliver, but I think all of this delivers. I think this is a cracking episode. It's definitely one of my favourites. And even though that bit where the Crittertain sort of attacks them doesn't really sort of go anywhere, but it's a sort of warning, isn't it? And it just means there's a little bit of jeopardy. And I love these bits. I love Murray Gold's music. I love everybody sort of assembling and looking cool, and the Doctor being focused. I love all of that sort of hero shots. And that's actually very well directed, because there's loads of stuff going on. Mickey ends up quite far back, but we never lose anybody, and there's different dynamics going on, and it's also quite a funky and this is brilliant, this wonderful face-off. Murray Gold's score here is superb, I think, for the whole thing. Can you imagine it without it? And I love this scene. I think this scene is absolutely terrific, and I don't always like it when stories stop and everyone explains things to people, but this is actually important. This is important stuff. It's not just the plot stopping because they're both seeing where each other stands. So I forgive the exposition in that it's they're surveying each other, if you like, and it also creates a chance for us to have this brilliant line that's about to come up that I think is at the heart of what is very interesting about Doctor Who and some of its contradictions and some of our own contradictions about morality. Can you be a liberal crusader? Is that not an oxymoron? And I think that's a problem of our times too, where we see people who are on the side of right doing terrible things. So who decides what's right and who decides what's terrible? And I like all this dialogue, peaceful to the point of indolence. Anthony Head is bloody brilliant. I mean, this is a guy who's benefited from being, I mean, he's a good actor anyway, but benefited from being in 5 years of Buffy and knowing exactly how to deliver this stuff. And I like the fact that the villain kind of wants the Doctor to be on his side. Have I missed that line where he said, where he's got that brilliant line about saying, you want to preserve the old order. You talk like an anarchist, and you want to preserve the old order. That's not the exact line, but it's something along those lines, isn't it? I've even put the subtitles on to help me, and I missed it. But that is at the heart of, because Doctor Who often conserves what is there, which, as history has taught us, sometimes things need to be toppled, and sometimes the Doctor does topple. But I can see Brother Lassar's point about going, hang on, progress needs change, and you're just all about keeping things the same they are. Your big sad eyes and the robot dog. It's the economy of this is very good as well, and what I like about this is that Rose is a bit out of order sometimes. Sarah is a bit out of order sometimes. And they are sort of fighting over him as well, which I think is quite funny. I mean, it is a bit on the nose. They've clearly said, have a scene where they have an argument, but then they realise they've got common ground, and it's a bit like Rose and Eve Miles in The Unquiet Dead, where it's like, have a conversation where the fact that you're from ages ago means you don't understand things from the modern day, and then you have a moment where you agree on something and you realise that you're the same. It is a bit on the nose, but that's fine. That's fine. It is, it's Doctor Who. It has to be broad strokes sometimes. Because it has to do stuff with economy, and it also has to be suitable for children. And no, it's fine. You tune in to the storytelling and accept it for what it is. And I think it's really good quality stuff. And it's amazing how lean this is, and how quickly and efficiently the story tells itself. The baddies are about to go on the march. 27 minutes in. That's extraordinary, isn't it? And some of these child actors, by the way, Lucinda Dryzek is she's in the opening of one of the Pirates of the Caribbean films, and one of the lads is he's a Rodney Trotter, isn't he, in Only Fools and Horses? But again, you get the opinion some of those kids scenes have been cut. But Kenny gets his own special bit, which we'll see later, which I'm absolutely fine with. Oh, and here's these teachers are about to get eaten, which is rather fun. Yeah, very good. And are we going to see the thing behind that? Yay! That I think it's such a brilliant motif, that. And again, it's a gruesome and horrible death, but it's palatable because it's behind closed doors. It's the sort of thing that Doctor Who, when it's on song, it judges, it treads that line absolutely perfectly. But I'm sure this actor Eugene Washington, he's on the red button thing, and then and I think did a couple of convention appearances, and then I think went, I don't need to do that anymore. And I think, and it's funny, I think he came to learn quite quickly that you don't necessarily want to be too associated with the bit you did in Doctor Who, because I've done other stuff, and that's, I think, always the dilemma of people that have been in Doctor Who. Do I capitalise upon it, or and then do I start to resent it? On a smaller level than Leonard Nimoy on Spock or whatever, but it is something that actors have to consider. And I always note with interest, who does signings and embraces them, like Anita Dobson at the moment, absolutely doing all of that stuff. And I know she gets on really well with the Phantom Films boys and absolutely loves it. Whereas some people are a little bit more cautious, and I understand the caution of going, well, yeah, but I don't want to, Doctor Who's just one part of me, and that's not all that I want to do. And I feel that, and Doctor Who's got a big part of me, but there's a part of me that's like, I'm a proper actor, I do proper things. Doctor Who's just, I'm not just Doctor Who. But I love that Kenny is compared to some of the other kids. He's slightly tubbier, and he's not, he's the slight spotty kid. He's a bit like, I didn't have glasses at school, but I feel I identify with Kenny slightly, the kid that nobody's in a hurry to ask for anything, or particularly certainly to do anything sort of heroic. And I think Kenny is many of us, and I like that. And he can't say children, which I think it's funny. But that's to me Doctor Who. That and I think latterly it's become populated with a lot of sort of very sexy young things, and I rather like it when everyone's a little bit more. And again, I don't use the word pejorative, ordinary. And I like the fact that I love this. It's really funny. We're in a car, and Mickey and K9 are quite a good double act. And I think what Doctor Who does at this time very well is that it balances everybody and gives everybody their moment. And I've got no idea what the Scace's paradigm is. In fact, I think when this was first on, I had to look up what paradigm meant, which is a good thing, isn't it? But it's great. It's this music theme, which isn't, I'm sure is not on any of the CDs, is really, really good. Yeah, and so we've got a reason why it's done in a school, why you've got children. I think it's very cleverly, it really all holds together. Look at that brilliant piece of direction there as well. But yeah, it's nicely balanced that everybody gets their sort of hero moment. Everybody's in it for a reason. Nobody's really killing time. I don't think there's anything in this that you don't need. In fact, if anything, it feels just a little slightly, but with an extra 5 minutes. Well, with an extra 5 minutes, though, it wouldn't have rattled along in the way that it does, because it still has time for, a slower pace. The scene in the cafe, the scene by the swimming pool. We have the slower bits. I think the filming of that by the swimming pool is really good, and the light bouncing off the water and all of that is superb. And David Tennant is really, really good at this stuff. He's very good at suggesting the fact that, despite his young sort of whippersnapper persona, there's ancient suffering with there. And yeah, I mentioned before that thing about goodbyes and lives being fleeting. Honestly, as you get older, my God, I really feel that. And I'm sure, I wonder if Paul, I wonder if this is something that appeals to Paul. And Sarah's right. Pain and loss define us. And we, it's not a week goes by somebody I know doesn't die, because a lot of my social circle is actors who had their heydays in the 1960s, as my friend said. So you're always losing someone, and you do feel that loss, but that is part of life. And it's an inevitable part of life, but it's also a sad part of life, and it what gives us our scars and our sorrows and our depth. And so then, in a way, we can kind of feel what the Doctor feels a little bit, not in that awful, I need the Doctor to be a certain way in order to identify with him or whatever, but more that we can impose our own the feelings on that aspect of the character, which a younger viewer will not. A younger viewer will see different things, but a younger viewer may come to see why, perhaps. I think Nigel Neal does it very cleverly in the final Quatermass. He comes up with a sci-fi reason that young people and old people don't quite understand each other, and I think that's where I love the way the camera slightly moves when the Krillitanes hit the wall. It's little. James Hawes is really, I think all of his shooting of this is really, really fantastic. It's odd because he directed New Earth as well, isn't it? Which is not one I massively go back to. But the pacing of this is all brilliant. The way Anthony Head's scream, of course, is excellent as well. You Can Feast. Oh, it's so good. It's brilliant, this, isn't it? Absolutely fantastic. And I think the CGI monsters are fine. They're pretty good. And here comes K9 to save the day. Yay! And I get a little bit emotional. I get a sort of tear in my eye. I love moments of heroism where somebody comes in and does a brave thing. And Anthony Head, all he's doing there is giving them something to cut to, because obviously this action is hard to orchestrate, and if you showed it in just one wide angle shot, you'd see that a lot of people were standing around, and the monsters probably had time to eat everybody. But you have to buy yourself some time, and television grammar allows you to do different stuff. But what they needed for some of their time was a close-up of Anthony Head doing something alien, and he's absolutely bang on. And then he gets the line "shooty dog thing," which is, of course, is one that has endured. So this is an episode that, although it's there to serve a purpose for Rose and has the unintended consequence of relaunching Sarah Jane, etc., etc., I love that Kenny has the great idea. I feel there's a missing scene or a missing link or something, but it's all right. Kenny's got it. He knows that they won't handle the fire alarm. That's nice. It shows us the strength of the head. I love the way he does that slightly villainous walk there as well, having pulled the wires out of the wall. But yes, I do get a bit tearful when somebody sort of comes in and does something a bit brave. I find this story really emotional. I think it's because of the time in my life that it was as well. I was writing Moths Ate My Doctor Who scarf. I was writing about the importance of being a father, but my relationship wasn't in a great place, and I think I was clinging on to the fatherhood stuff because I knew that was important, and I knew that was something I'd not had as a kid, and so I wanted to not be the bad dad, but the writing was on the wall is that I clearly wasn't going to be the staying around in the house for much longer dad. I was in denial about that, actually, but maybe that's why a lot of this touches my emotions in a way, because it actually speaks to stuff things never explode when you unplug them, but again, that's another beautiful television shorthand. But yes, I think this takes me back to a time of pain and triumph, because this obviously features in Moths Ate My Doctor Who scarf because it was a moment when my son Louis had wanted to watch Doctor Who with me, and we watched it, and he was sad that K9 blew up, and I was sad that K9 blew up, and that's what I thought was so brilliant about it, was that it spoke to both of us. I, as somebody that had a bond and a relationship and an understanding and a history with K9, and him he obviously heard of it and seen pictures and that sort of thing, but he pretty much got it from this episode, although he knew that K9 had been a character in Doctor Who, so he was perhaps slightly beyond everybody else. But I didn't quite believe that they brought K9 back to kill him. I didn't see I was spoiler free or whatever. And certainly didn't go seeking them out, and I don't think the internet was quite as bad as it was. Well, I don't think there was Twitter at this point. I certainly wasn't on Twitter at this point, but there weren't quite the same sort of leaks there are now, or if they were, I was free of them. So I was totally shocked that they decided to kill K9. I thought that was quite a moment, and K9, and he's only a silly robot dog, and he gets, "You bad dog." K9. I've got tears in my eyes now. Isn't that ridiculous? Because I know he comes back, but he's not the same K9 that comes back. And Kenny gets kudos for blowing up the school. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Kenny blew up the school, yay! I love that. I think that's brilliant. This really tugs at my heartstrings, this story, and I'm not a hugely emotional person, am I? Well, I think I am, but I think my emotions, my early life meant that I had to keep my emotions sort of buried a little bit, because being tearful was not rewarded with anything other than being told off or mocked. So I think things like that act as a sort of, drama is important for acting as an emotional conduit in a way. There's something good about having something that releases laughter or releases tension or provokes tears, that acts as a sort of, your engine seizes up if it doesn't have oil going through it, in the same way that your emotions seize up if you don't occasionally have an outlet of laughter or tears. And I love the fact that good drama can do that. And one of the I was talking to some friends, some colleagues in the play I'm in at the moment, where you agree with some characters and you disagree with others, and depending on who you are, that changes your response to the play. But it interests me that now, there's a tendency to sort of say, well, I don't like that play or that piece of television because that I disagree with that character. But you're literally in a safe space if you're watching a piece of drama. It is not real. So that is the one place where you should be confronted with people who might say and do things you don't like, even if they're people that you do like saying things you don't like, or people you don't like saying things you do like. It's how we explore ideas. And I find that a lot of demands made on drama these days are very prescriptive about what are the right things to say and who are the right people to say things and do things and not. And I find that extremely limiting. And what I like about Doctor Who of this period is that we're presented people that we like doing bad things. We're presented with people that we like sometimes being heroic, sometimes saying the wrong thing, sometimes being prone to bitchiness, sometimes being prone to judgmentalism, and presented that as, well, that's interesting. And the drama's not saying, we're going to punish them for that, we're going to make them account for it like modern day scolds. It's drama, and an intelligent and emotionally mature person responds to that by going, and how am I like that, and what does that make me think? And yes, I do that, and maybe I shouldn't, but maybe I have to live with the fact that I do. And it's, complicated, interesting stuff. But when it's written with such wit and such insight, I think that's the thing. I think really good writing it writes insightfully about characters and without judgment, actually, because we are complicated creatures. I love this scene, the way she tells him to say it, because he didn't like it. And I love her original leaving scene, which is all repressed emotion, and I wouldn't change that for the world. And I actually think there should be more of that in modern day Doctor Who. But this just felt so right. And unlike, I think, Rose's return to Bad Wolf Bay, a couple of years after us leaving her there, or returning to Catherine Tate after that brilliant ending, which I don't think we necessarily benefited from. I actually don't think this in any way undoes the great work done by Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen in The Hand of Fear, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful scene. And yet it gives us this special moment, which if you're a new viewer, it's just nice. If you're an old viewer, it does feel like a goodbye again, because we didn't know at this time that Sarah Jane and K9 were coming back, and I would have been happy if this had been the last we'd ever seen of K9 and Sarah Jane. The fact is we got them back again is another kind of bonus, especially in light of the fact that then we lost Elizabeth Sladen so early. Oh, I love that episode. It makes me so happy and sad at the same time. And that's beautiful, isn't it? And I'm always reminded of Stephen Moffat's line, sad is happy for deep people. I think it is important that we have things that make us feel sad, because feeling sad can, like funerals are sad, but they are cleansing, and there is something nice about a funeral, even though it's sad. Sadness and happiness live side by side. As you can't have one without the other. As another great Doctor Who story said, it took me a few years to realise that was great. I realised this was great right from the start. I don't know why Caroline Berry is so low on the credits. It's not in order of appearance, because she does a lot more than some of those kids. Although, as I say, I think the kids' roles were cut down slightly. But anyway, Caroline is a marvellous actress who, as I say, is actually Welsh, and I think we know a lot of the same people, and she did a Who's Round, so check that out. But really bizarrely, even though when I first started seeing Cheryl Lee, Caroline was in Corrie with her, we've never actually properly met, but she befriended me on Facebook and offered to do Who's Round, so that's how we've communicated. And she's a mighty fine actress who those of you watching School Reunion might be surprised to know is Welsh, and is in a lot of fine drama set in Wales, but there is equally convincing as Cockney school dinner lady, and I think she's brilliant in it. So my 5 favourite things. This is going to be so hard because there is so much. So I'm going to try not to be too tricksy about it. It has to be the scene between Sarah and the Doctor when she realises it's him, having seen the TARDIS. I think that I've got old. Just the acting from both of them, what it means to you if you're a Doctor Who fan to have the Doctor and Sarah back together, but also the fact that it's tinged with that slight anger, slight regret that is so real, but it doesn't in any way undo any of the wonderful fondness that they have for each other, or demand too much of us in terms of our, reframing what we thought of their relationship in the past, which, it has to be said, to be fair, some of the other aspects of the Sarah Jane character do force us to do. As I say, I'm happy to go along with it because I think it's a marvellous episode. Now, I've got a few other things. I do like that swimming pool scene, although I noticed then what I was convinced was a line in the swimming pool scene, I noticed then was not, when I was talking about something else. "You act like such a radical," says Finch, "and yet all you want to do is preserve the old order. Think of the changes that could be made if this power was used for good. You behave like such a radical, yet all you want to preserve is the old order." I think is a brilliant line, and it gets to the heart of a contradiction about the Doctor, and I think it's fine for the Doctor to have contradictions. I mean, it should be unequivocal that the Doctor is the hero, but I like the fact that all of the moral decisions we made are actually made on compromises elsewhere. They have to be. And if you don't think you're making a compromise, you're a little too certain to me. And as Doctor Who tells us, the ones that are really certain, that's the Daleks, by the way, they're the bad guys. And again, I see a lot too much moral certainty from a lot of people who discuss Doctor Who and other things, and I think they're on a sticky wicket. And just because you think you're the good guy, you've got to kind of look at what it is you're doing, because if you're doing bad things but you should think you should be allowed to because you're the good guy, what do you think the baddies were doing? They weren't going, we're doing this because we're bad. They were doing this because they were going, we're doing this bad thing, but we have to do it because the people we're doing the bad things to, they're bad. So, yeah, certain. Anyway, that's a side issue. I have to be careful not to, well, that school reunion tells us I have to be careful just because I'm getting on a bit now to be going, and all the young things are wrong. I've got to object to them on principle because, of course, the other side of it is, as you get old, you get a little bit less relevant, you're a little bit less in touch, and it may well be that all the things you have thought are right for the past 40 years, well, they might have been right 40 years ago and they're not right now. And change is important, but actually change is what the baddie is on about here, so that's curious. But you have to also embrace change, even if that change means shifting you to one side or reframing some of your points of reference. So I think this story opens up all of that stuff. It's on the surface, it's a simple thing about the old companion showing Rose that she's not the only one, but I think Toby Whithouse has taken that and he's run with that, and thematically this is really rigorous and really thought-provokingly done. But because that line isn't in the swimming pool scene, even though I love the swimming pool scene, I think that means instead of choosing the swimming pool scene, which I was going to choose, I think I'm just going to choose Anthony Head because he would have been part of the success of the swimming pool scene. But I'm going to choose Anthony Head because I think he's brilliant. He's obviously fluent in how to do Doctor Who. He's obviously, done a lot of this sort of stuff before in Buffy, but this time he's playing the out-and-out baddie, and he seizes it, and he's good value, and he gives you everything you need, and he's precise, and he's sharp, and he's excellent, and he's a really good actor, and obviously very much genre sympathetic, for which we are grateful. And he was there giving a little bit of kudos to Doctor, a bit of stateside kudos to Doctor Who, even though he was based over here and from here. But he brought with him a little bit of Buffy stardust, I think, which was very nice of him to do. Even though I would have been surprised if he hadn't cropped up in Doctor Who at this time. It just seemed inevitable, even though he'd done Big Finish first, which I knew because Ed Salt, who was just before, when did I do Midsummer Night's Dream? 2000, I think it was about 2004. So just before Doctor Who came back, stage manager on Midsummer Night's Dream at Royal Exchange was Ed Salt, who's done bits and bobs for Doctor Who magazine and stuff like that. But he'd done some work for Big Finish, and he'd got a Big Finish that I think he directed with Anthony Head in it, and he gave it to me. So that was actually the first proper Big Finish that I had. Amazing. I don't know why I didn't talk more to Ed. It's funny because Ed's a big Doctor Who fan and I'm a big Doctor Who fan, but Doctor Who wasn't on then, so we didn't really talk about Doctor Who that much in a way that I would now with Doctor Who fans. I didn't really have many Doctor Who fan friends. It was funny how if Ed and I had met a year later, we would have been talking 19 to the dozen, but it was kind of the love that dare not speak its name. Even, only 18 months possibly before Doctor Who was back. Anyway, that's another story. What else do I like? I like the fact that it's the, for want of a better phrase, it's the fat kid who blows up the school. I think that's great. I think that sends a message. I'm slightly suspicious of the way that everyone on television who's young these days has to be sort of buff and sexy. I know there are sort of freaks and geeks shows now as well, but I think the default, but often they're cast as a model with glasses on. That the default is now a little bit, and I don't just mean kids now. I mean everybody seems to need to have gone to the gym. Everyone seems to need to be a bit sexy and idealized, and it's often from productions that sort of prate about people should be judged for what they are, but we're only gonna put the sexy ones on television, and I think a dishonest view of physicality and body shape is presented as a matter of course on a lot of television. So I love the fact that this school kid who is cut from a different cloth, a slightly bigger cloth, is the one. The school dweeb is the one that ends up doing the heroic bit and becomes the hero of the school. I love that. That's a great message as well. So that's my point number 3. Actually, before I choose my final 2 things, maybe some listener comments will help. I usually read these out at the beginning, and to be honest, it quite slipped my mind. So I think it's always very nice to hear from listeners, which normally happens, episode to episode, but I tipped off the patrons that School Reunion was coming up, and there's quite a full mailbag, if you can have such a thing in this digital age. So let's go straight to the first message I got when I mentioned that School Reunion was coming up. This is from Frank Shales. Frank says, I remember being quite irked at the time by Tennant's incarnation offhandedly telling Sarah he'd regenerated half a dozen times since they last met. Did Davison's doctor not remember the 5 doctors? Highly likely when you think about it, wisdom of Rassilon and all that, but still. However, what a stupid fool I was, he types in Security Chief Styley, when it turned out later, retcon, that there was a whole previously unsuspected incarnation between McGann and Eccleston. You worry too much about such things, Frank, but I'm glad it all worked out well for you in the end. Joe Llewellyn says, let me list the reasons I love School Reunion so much. It has Giles from Buffy in a very Buffy episode. My favourite song, Love Will Tear Us Apart, plays in the background. But what makes this so special was, of course, Elizabeth Sladen. I had never seen a minute of classic Who when I saw School Reunion, but the writing and acting told me everything I needed to know. The scene where Sarah Jane saw the TARDIS and turned around and saw the Doctor gave me chills. I was resisting watching the classic series because it was a lot to consume. Other people have remarked about the joy in the Doctor's face when he saw Sarah Jane. Was it the Doctor or the actor? School Reunion, the middle of a 3-episode streak of stone-cold classics. I agree with that, Joe. And my introduction to the greatest companion of them all. Thanks, Joe. And she's the greatest companion of them all for you. And you're not a child of old Who. You were introduced, you came into Who with the new series. So I'm loving that, Joe. Ruben Herfindahl says, in 2005, I met Liz at Gallifrey 1. We ended up being the only people left on the Monday morning. My wife, Liz, and Andrew Beach. She was exhausted, as we all were, and she told us she was done with being Sarah Jane Smith. She had done a Big Finish spin-off. So when this came out a year later, it was a surprise, to say the least. Ha ha! Oh, well, a girl can change her mind, Reuben. Julian Botting says, the first Doctor Who that made me cry. It has for various reasons since, but School Reunion really pulled at my heartstrings. Andrew Willis says, I too found myself tearing up at the end for the first time watching the show. It was the moment the Doctor says, goodbye, my Sarah Jane. I think it's an age thing, but I find everything on the telly makes me cry now. I'm a particular sucker for those montages the BBC play at the end of sports tournaments. I'm a bit of I well up a little bit now. I think, I seem to recall. Yes, I don't know, because I think of myself as somebody who finds emotions difficult to access, but actually I was quite teary as a kid, and often used to get mocked for that. But I also think I do sort of bung things up and let them fester and can be quite remote. Well, we're not all one thing, are we? But I do tear up at telly. I tear up at hero moments, and I did tear up at my Sarah Jane as well. You see, I'm wondering now. I've chosen that first. I mean, nothing's set in stone. I can change my mind up until the point I start listening to Paul's suggestions. But I think it's just to choose Elizabeth Sladen would then, that would get me that first scene and that closing scene. But I almost think they deserve their own pick. Oh, it doesn't matter. I would like to acknowledge, because I was thinking, with my two left, I think that last scene, Goodbye My Sarah Jane, because when I rewatched the episode, which I did a lot at the time, the scene where they first meet and the goodbye scene were the two sort of moments for me that I really particularly looked forward to, and always got me, and did this time, even though I was talking through them. Jack Sharp says, I can only imagine what a lovely thing this episode was for those of you with fond memories of Sarah Jane and K9 from the good old days. I sadly didn't get into Doctor Who until 2010, and I think by the time I saw this episode, I'd already seen a good chunk of the Sarah Jane adventures. My highlight, though, has to be K9. Who cares about Sarah Jane when you've brought back the real star of 1970s Doctor Who? Ha ha, thanks, Jack. Yes, I think this episode... But I have to say, I wasn't... I think I mentioned I wasn't particularly looking forward to Sarah Jane and K9 coming back, because we'd already had that with K9 and company, and it just seemed to me to be, well, why are they doing that again? And of course they were doing it to tell this particular story. But what I think helps School Reunion as well is that it's not just the return of Sarah Jane and K9. I think it's a good episode in its own right, and I think it would be all too easy for the surrounding episode to be a bit disposable. But I think the school setting, the villains, it's a story that has a lot of thoughtfulness in its sort of monster of the week element as well, and I think that's to its great credit. It doesn't rest on its laurels because of its headlines, if you like. Jason says, when I heard that Elizabeth Sladen would be reprising her role as Sarah Jane Smith, I thought we'd be getting a nice little cameo, a direct link to the classic series, but nothing major. I was not prepared for the wonderful episode we got, nor for the superb performance from Sladen. Yes, I cried a bit at the end, and it's really no surprise that on the back of this, she got her own series, which, by the way, was not only a great Doctor Who spin-off, but a truly superb piece of television, full stop. Yes, indeed. One of my favourite episodes, not only of 21st Century Who, can't really call it new, now it's 20 years old, can we, but of all time. Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. Andrew says, a wonderful return for the best companion the show ever had. The ending gets me every time. Also, love the confrontation between the Doctor and the Krillitane leader. I used to have so much mercy. I'm so old now. Always makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Brandon Moore says, so some context for myself. I started watching Doctor Who with Series 2. I was very young at the time. I won't make you feel old by saying how young, but you can imagine. I did not know much about the history of the show at this point. After all, this was only its second series, so the arrival of Sarah Jane and K9 were interesting additions. However, my grandmother said she remembered these characters from when my mother was a child. This opened a whole new world to my tiny eyes, especially with the Cybermen turning up 2 weeks later. But as for the episode, very good. Being of the age that I was, so back at that thorny issue again, the idea of the Doctor turning up to a class as a supply teacher was definitely my favourite thing. And I love his use of the word correctamundo. The Doctor may never use that word again, but I certainly do. That's interesting, Brandon, that the supply teacher, and that is quite a good wheeze, of course, for the sort of school-age children that Doctor Who has to be suitable for. Doctor as teacher would be pretty damn cool, yeah. Whereas I was watching, obviously, as an older person, and actually this time I'm watching, I have a different reaction to it now because I'm closer to Elizabeth Sladen's age when she returns to Doctor Who than I was when I first watched it, and this whole thing, and actually the school setting is, I think the school setting is a good. And a very apt one, because it's when you go back to schools and you see those chairs that used to seem normal that seem so small, and everything that, because school is when you sort of first properly sort of feel yourself as part of society and how you fit in or not or whatever. And to find those sort of shapes and sizes and angles and everything different when you go in as a child, and the chairs just feel the same and yet different because you're a different frame and you've got different experience. And I think the fact that it's set as a school means that how we view it as we get older is different, because I view schools even more differently now to how I viewed them when I got my own kids at school. My own kids have left school now, and the whole thing about Sarah, I got old. Well, I got older. I got closer to Sarah's age since this was broadcast, when it already meant something to me. So it's a story that it rewards a revisit because it is about aging and difference, and something I feel as a 50-year-old man, a question of relevance. Rose has that question of, well, what will I stop being relevant to the Doctor? And I think, we all go through, well, am I relevant to life? And even if I feel relevant and I've got relevant things to say, is anybody listening? It's not whether I feel I'm relevant, it's whether the people out there, and of course young people probably don't want to hear what older people have to say. I do think that's a shame, but that certainly seems to be the way things are going, and I'm aware I sound like an old person saying that. Fascinating. Joe McLachlan says, I bloody love School Reunion. It handles so well the potential pitfall of reintroducing a classic character pretty much seamlessly. And we all know how well it ended up going. And Tent's delight at seeing Elizabeth Sladen is probably the least acting he had to do for his entire run in the series. He's great though, isn't it, Joe? David Gillespie Pratt says, I can remember exactly what I was doing the day this was first shown. Nursing injuries from a day paintballing. While the others went to town drinking, I went home to watch Sarah and K9 appear in Doctor Who, and I don't regret it in the least. Also, who else did a little scream of joy when Liz Sladen appeared in the trailer after the Christmas invasion? Patrick Emery adds to David's comment, between that and the Middle Eight returning, the closing trail and credits of the Christmas invasion are close to my favourite moments of that initial comeback era. So I'll read that again for Patrick. Between that and the Middle Eight returning, the closing trail and credits of the Christmas invasion are close to my favourite moments of that initial comeback era. I remember, Patrick, watching that trailer over and over again. And it's funny actually watching it, and you think, like, for example, bullets can't stop it. And then a shot of the Cyberman. And I thought, well, that must be from the Cyberman episode. So how weird it actually turned out to be from Tooth and Claw and all those things, that those episodes, those clips that even now I know them as parts of the episode, I will never forget them as being a quick sneak preview that we got, and how I imagined what context they were in and often got it wrong. And all that beautiful stuff. I mean, we used to comb over trailers almost frame by frame. I love that excitement, and the way that they drip fed us was it was all very, very well done. David Spofford says, I was welling up so much when K9 got blown up after the Doctor called him a good dog, but then it was a full-on big manly fountains of tears when K9 Mark IV materialised. So you welled up when he got blown up, but you let big manly fountains of tears flow, David, when K9 Mark IV materialised. I think that's fair enough. Robbie Carnegie says, I think School Reunion was the moment at which New Who really became a thing of joy, fully embracing the series past, with Tennant as the perfect link between old and new. The moment when Sarah Jane realises who he is was beautiful and powerful, and the reappearance of K9 at the end tear-inducing. At some points, the relationship of Ten and Rose can feel a bit immature and sometimes slightly cruel. Connecting again with Sarah Jane makes him grow up. Also, Elizabeth Sladen is fantastic. On a separate point, my wife went to Dufferin High School, where it is filmed, so there was great excitement seeing K9 shooting aliens in the hall where she did her exams. Love that, Robbie. That's great. Susie Ferguson says, School Reunion is a top-tier example of how to blend old and new Who, in my humble opinion. The beauty of it is it's a good and interesting story in its own right, I agree, Susie, that doesn't depend on the need for understanding something from the past, indeed. If Sarah Jane had just been some generic journalist, the main alien story would still have worked, but by using a character from the past that fits the bill, you're able to elevate the story. I watched this as a kid with no knowledge of classic Who. I could tell Sarah Jane was a big deal, but I didn't feel put out by not knowing who she was, and both the writing and her performance allowed me to quickly get up to speed and still have the emotional hit at the end that I'm sure would have come anyway for classic Who viewers. Her presence was not fan service at the expense of throughout new viewers, something I think sadly seems to happen a bit more now. Excellent episode, and everyone in it is just on top form. Jason Thompson adds, I love this comment, Susie. It really gives the lie to people who say that adding stuff from the past is just fan service and people who didn't watch the old stuff won't get it. It can still be done clumsily. Witness 4 characters standing in a room explaining about Cybermen, Mondas, Telos, the 10th Planet, Tomb of the Cybermen, etc. at the start of Part 2 of Attack of the Cybermen. But when done well, it doesn't matter if you haven't seen the earlier stuff. See also Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which absolutely does not require anyone to have seen the original series episode Space Seed that it's a sequel to in order to understand and enjoy it. Susie Ferguson replies to Jason's reply to her reply. A Wrath of Khan is another perfect example, as it's the only Star Trek movie I've seen from that generation and absolutely love it. A well-written story will always speak for itself. Steve White says, for me, this was probably the first standout story of the first Tennant era. Anthony Head is really chilling as the Krillitane leader, and his scene across the pool with the 10th Doctor was brilliant. It's a great scene, isn't it, Steve? Head's performance carrying much underlying menace and hatred for the Doctor and what he stands for, and Tennant's Doctor really giving off a sense of restrained power. This could easily be my favourite thing of the episode if it wasn't for the fact that the whole episode was really an excuse to have Liz Sladen back as Sarah Jane. God, she was good in this. It was just wonderful to see her again, and she soon took me back to being 4 years old again. Love her. Yeah, you see, I'm erring towards that pool scene as well, but I have chosen Anthony Head, which I hope might mean that if Paul chooses the pool scene, I can kind of steal a bit of pointage from it. Who knows? Simon Curtis says, funnily enough, I have just this evening watched School Reunion again, having finished Hand of Fear on a Tom watch through, and then watched the Liz documentary on the Blu-ray, which is great, but a tough last 10 minutes. Oh, isn't it? And watching School Reunion felt a good way to close that off. Lovely ep. Liz is rather wonderful, and her relationship with Rose is very well handled. And I love the music, which for some reason didn't go on the soundtrack release. Thank you, Simon. I, too, miss it on the soundtrack release. Bum, 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 bum. It's a great track. Watched this earlier, so I think that might deserve a vote as well. But then I don't get K9 blowing up. I might have to kill Kenny, because I like Kenny blowing up the school, but I might, you see, should have done these at the beginning. No, actually, this is useful because I've got too many good things, so I'm reserving the right to remove one of the 3 that I've chosen. I might kill Kenny. Watched this earlier this year. This is Matt Foy. Watched this earlier this year for the first time in a while on The Pilgrimage. I'm on Matt Smith now, but dying for a bit of Hartnell. But I digress. Whilst the plot is slight but fun, it really is the character moments that make this one, and the reaction shots, Sarah seeing the TARDIS, and the Doctor to her, are wonderful. And K9, really nice to read the comments from those who hadn't seen the classic series before on first viewing, shows how deftly it was handled. It felt like a moment at the time, after the success of Series 1, that the production team felt able to try something like this and pay tribute to the past without overdoing it. And Aberdeen always makes me smile. Aberdeen is a great choice because it's got a Aberdeen. It's as a place to be dropped off by mistake, and also because geographically it's miles away. I've been to Aberdeen. It took a long time. I went to Aberdeen to do a gig actually, which involved me missing episode 1 of the Sontaran Stratagem that I had to watch the next day. I think it was that. Yeah. Anyway, Aberdeen. I went to Aberdeen. It wasn't the Sun. Was it the Sun? No, I don't think it was. What did I? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. I went to Aberdeen once and it took ages. But Aberdeen is a good choice because it sounds funny as well. Jason Thompson is quoting now from Matt's message. Whilst the plot is slight but fun, it really is the character moments that make this one. Absolutely, says Jason. I saw a rather well-known Doctor Who author in 2006 dismiss this episode because if you take out Sarah Jane Smith, it's a very thin plot about aliens trying to take over the universe. I mean, is it possible to miss the point any more widely? The episode is called School Reunion. The reunion with Sarah Jane Smith is literally the point. The Krillitane plot is the backdrop for the impact that it has on all the characters. That's like saying if you took out all the stuff with Khan seeking revenge against Kirk in Star Trek 2, it's just a boring plot about a madman with a superweapon. That's the second time I've mentioned that movie in this batch of comments, but as it's so great, I stick by it. Everyone's got me in the mood to watch Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and also because I've listened to a very good podcast very recently called World of Telly with the estimable John Williams and Neil Perryman talking about Fantastic Journey, and there's a young actor in that called Ike Eisenman who I hadn't realised is and then I looked at him again. I went, oh no, that's him. Who's the guy who's Peter Preston in Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, who gets far more to do in the book, which was my first. I'd seen a bit of. Let's not get into Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. Anyway, I haven't seen it for years, and I should. And I want to chest like Ricardo Montalban's. David Trainier. I do love this episode for its moments. The first time the Doctor sees Sarah Jane Smith, when she sees the TARDIS, the swimming pool, I can't spend the rest of mine with you. And that is actually a bit like having a dog. I mean, never mind Mickey being the dog, because we talk about our dogs saying we don't spend the whole of our lives with our dogs, but our dogs spend the whole of our lives, unless we've rescued them or something, but generally if you get a dog as a puppy, they spend their whole life with you, and that is a different relationship, because you always have to be aware that they're going to be a passing thing in your life, and that's tragic and sad, and it does make you slightly sort of aloof from them. Just in terms of how you view your time together. Rose's look to the Doctor at the suggestion of another Smith, and goodbye my Sarah Jane. That's a lot of things, David. And yet when I first saw it in 2006, it left me feeling melancholy for some time because of the image of that vibrant and beautiful girl in the Andy Pandy outfit pining away for her lost love for 30 years. That's never sat right for me, as beautiful as it was in the playing, and we're going to remake the universe with a room full of school kids feels at once too big and too silly. And speaking of not sitting right, that little frilly skirt and pigtails bit felt grimy and undoctorish then, and certainly does now. I'd overlooked that bit. Yes, I think there's probably that is all of that side of things is very interesting about how characters are discussed in that way, which I think is probably a subject for another podcast. Jasper says, my context for this episode actually follows on from what I just commented on the Mission to the Unknown episode, and about how I ran away from Series 1 and didn't return until Series 3. I did, however, watch the Sarah Jane Adventures on CBBC, and I didn't get around to Series 1 and 2 until 2019 when I was 21, so in the end I probably ended up in a similar situation to folks who'd watched Sarah Jane episodes when they were younger, seeing a figure from their childhood interacting with characters they'd only encountered in adulthood, except that Sarah Jane looked roughly the same age as I remembered. I've gone back and forth on whether I enjoy the dynamic that ensues between the character I know and love, Sarah Jane, and the character I'm newer to, Rose. Love triangles and romantic competitiveness generally bore me at best and feel uncomfortable at worst, but I think one of the strengths of the early years of New Who is the reflection of real and recognisable life, and as much as stuff like this might bug me, it's definitely true to life. So them having to navigate that and realise they're looking at it all wrong, while that might feel obvious to me, is a worthwhile endeavour because it's so grounded in what those characters really might have dealt with in that situation. Here are several aspects of this episode that I love unequivocally. Anthony Head is so good. The Krillitanes are a neat idea. K9! We are in a car. The CBBC feel of it all. The plucky school kid. I also, on my most recent New Who rewatch, started season 1 in summer last year. I'm currently on season 8. Got more invested in Mickey than the first time round I watched his episodes, i.e. 2019. So I was really into his realisation that he was the tin dog, prompting him to want to go adventuring and eventually leading to his transformation into a hero. And his amusement at Rose feeling threatened by Sarah Jane. I don't know if I just watched New Who 2 out of order, but the climax with the Doctor seriously considering Anthony Head's proposal never really rang true with me. I kept expecting him to reveal he was faking out the villain, that he would never, that no man, especially not either of them, should hold too much power. But it turned out he actually was thinking about it, until, if I remember right, his friends snap him out of it, which obviously is good for a companion-focused story, but just doesn't quite feel like 10 to me. But then again, it's quite early in 10's first series. Ironically, I've just now reached Sarah Jane stories in my classics watch-through, Invasion of the Dinosaurs this week, loving it. So in several months' time, I will finally understand the full extent of Sarah Jane's conversations with the Doctor in this episode. No, you won't. Paul Goodridge, thanks Jasper. Paul Goodridge says, the moment Sarah Jane realises who he is and the ending My Sarah Jane are spine-tingling and tear-inducing retrospectively. The argument between Rose and Sarah is brilliant. The Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster. I also particularly like how this episode clearly takes longer than its runtime. The Doctor and Rose have been there for a while, and the story takes place over more than one day. This was quite unusual at the time, when the events in most new series episodes seem to last barely longer than the episode runtime. There are lots of great moments, but the plot is very slight and barely hangs together. So, is character enough? Is it okay to get away with plot that would be very far from a top-tier episode if Sarah Jane and K9 weren't in it? To this day, I'm not sure. I love the episode, but I'm conscious that it all hangs on nostalgia and performance, not the actual plot. Well, Paul, as Jason says, I think, the plot is dictated by the story that focuses on character and performance, and luckily it has great performance of character, but the plot at least is not unrelated. It's not just like, it's not a B plot in the sense, because the Krillitanes plan does have ramifications on the themes and the characters that we're concentrating on. So and it's got added brilliant stuff like the school setting and the chips and what the creatures are, and how they stand opposed to the Doctor and why they might tempt him into it shows what choice the Doctor has made, not always the easiest choice to do the right thing. So I think the answer is the plot is what it is. Is actually a good move for a story of this kind, where the headline news is something else. So I think I'm definitely, because everyone said they love the opening and they love the My Sarah Jane, so I don't feel guilty for choosing both of those things. So to recap, I chose the first meeting between the Doctor and Sarah. I chose Anthony Head, although I wanted to choose the swimming pool scene. And I chose Kenny. I'm also going to choose Goodbye, My Sarah Jane, which leaves me, the school setting I think is brilliant. I love the fact that the Krillitanes make the camera bump when they hit the walls. I love James Hawes's direction, which I think is superb, and actually it's not as showy as his direction of the Empty Child, the Doctor Dances, which is brilliantly directed. I think he's a standout director for me, James Hawes. But actually it's not self-conscious, I don't think, but it is still, it's doing very subtle, clever work. And I think, I think he the look and feel of it have taken a lot of thought and application, even though it doesn't necessarily draw attention to itself all of the time. So I think James Hawes deserves applause. But as I really like the Dutch angles and as I say, the camera move. I really like the conceit of having the Krillitanes change in shadow, either behind a glass door or get shadows against the wall. I think that's really clever use of Doctor Who. K9 getting blown up and the good dog and the sacrifice, which did make me cry. And the music, I think it's a really good score. I think Murray Gold does a really good job. The moon, I love the moon shots, because it does slow down a little bit when they have the stuff in the cafe. And I think the addition of the headmaster and that sort of nighttime attack and everything just keeps it suspenseful and rolling on. And that visual is beautiful. And Toby Whithouse, who I think is a real treat. I didn't really know Toby Whithouse's work. He was pretty new to me, certainly when he was announced, and I think he blends Doctor Who's humour and adventure and scares like a pro. Like, you know, he could have written for Doctor Who in the Hinchcliffe era, and I think he would have fitted right in, and that's as big a compliment as I can pay. So he's an important voice in this as well. So I think I am going to, sorry Kenny, I'm going to drop you, and I'm going to go Doctor and Sarah's first encounter. I'm going to go Anthony Head with a special nod to both the swimming pool scene and that line, "You behave like such a radical and all you want to do is preserve the old order," because I think that's really interesting. I'm also going to choose the goodbye my Sarah Jane scene, because I think that is really, really important. I'm going to choose K9 Good Dog Sacrifice Blow Up, because that made me cry as well. Can I throw Kenny back in? But I do like that piece of music. And there's lots of individual lines to love as well. I tell you what, I'm going to go for that music that isn't on the CDs, so yes, and it's a personal choice. I mean, what I'd really like to choose is the fact that it, and then one of the reasons for choosing the K9 scene is because that's a moment that I bonded with my son that makes it into, well, say my Doctor Who scarf, but it would be too self-serving to say this is the story that inspired basically the closing of my one-man show, that stopped it from being just a one-man show about Doctor Who, but made it one about me and my kids, and that's what gave it its heart, and that's what I think elevated it to the level of success that it had, because it was about more than Doctor Who. So I thank School Reunion and Modern Doctor Who for that. So those are my 5 things: Sarah's meeting with the Doctor, Sarah's goodbying with the Doctor, Anthony Head, K9's sacrifice, and the music, that piece of music in particular, which is cruelly left off the soundtrack CD. What a Paul's a good lad. I'm sure he'll choose some interesting things and do them in a witty way. He's a very good on-stage interviewer, is Paul, and I don't speak to him often enough, and I always enjoy his company when I spend time in it. Let's see what he's got to say.
Okay, Toby, so I hope you and the audience have enjoyed revisiting School Reunion quite as much as I did. It is a cracking episode, isn't it? I mean, it's one of those ones that you can just go back to over and over again. But you asked me to pick 5 things that I love about it, and that's a really tough thing to do. But you know, these are my 5 things. Your mileage may vary. So firstly, I mean, there's so many different performances that to pick from, and I don't just want to say, wasn't Elizabeth Sladen's performance brilliant, even though it was, or David Tennant's fantastic in it. I wanted to kind of drill down on that sort of thing. So I wanted to pick the relationship between Sarah Jane and Rose and how it was portrayed by Elizabeth Sladen and Billie Piper, because it starts off really quite spiky and there's all the jealousy, and then they just have that massive fight and end up becoming busy mates, and and they're laughing at the Doctor, and that reconciliation is just a really lovely moment.
That's interesting. I mean, it is a key part of the episode, but it's one for me that I actually have to do a little bit of heavy lifting with. I do find the whole we're arguing, we've found a thing, and in this case it's the Loch Ness monster, which I think is a little bit of a squeeze to say that's the one that makes Rose go, oh really? And back down. Um, and it's nice, and they do it nicely, but it does feel a little bit telly to me, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's so much else here that doesn't make me work quite so hard to love it. I mean, I suppose I can see the cogs. And the Sarah Jane and the bitch fight that they have, to me, is slightly based on that false premise of Sarah being in love with the Doctor in the olden days, which again they needed to kind of heighten that a little bit in order for the dynamic of the episode to work. But I have to do a bit of heavy lifting there, whereas other bits of it, just have to look at me to love them. The others, they need to take me to dinner, woo me, but the bits I've chosen, they just have to give me a side glance and my heart melts.
The next thing I do love about the episode is that we finally find out what it is like for an ex-companion returning to normal life after traveling across the universe. She'd seen such amazing things traveling in the TARDIS, and then it was just back to normality. Admittedly, dropped off in completely the wrong part of the UK, but there you go. That's what it was like for Sarah Jane Smith after leaving the Doctor.
Yeah, well, I mean, in some stories, Aberdeen would be enough to get the vote, and I think that is very wittily done, especially seeing as that does actually tie in with her last scene where she goes, I bet this isn't even Croydon. You don't know how much it isn't Croydon, sweetheart. And I think that thing about, and I've mentioned this before, and I mentioned it in other podcasts, that thing about forsaking your life with the Doctor being a sacrifice, being, yes, it's where we belong, and actually normality, you go back with an appreciation of life and normal life in inverted commas. That's what Doctor Who does. It shows us amazing things in order to show us actually that life and there's beauty and adventure and excitement and imagination to be had in every corner. That's what Doctor Who does. So so there should be a sort of sacrifice to that as well, because that is also life. And I feel that even I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is a far more successful person than I am on almost every level, but who was also saying, now I'm 50s, do we feel relevant? How do we negotiate that? And it is, and that is part of life, but it's also more frightening, I think, than Bat Monsters in a sense, because it's so sort of mundanely, it's the entropy of entropy of a very mundane character, and that hits even more now that I'm closer to Sarah's age, which I think is why setting it in a school and having those different age groups and everything, it makes it starker and starker. And how, yes, life, never mind monsters and invading the universe, just the inexorable way that life moves in time in one inevitable direction, in one inevitable pace and way and direction, has its own fears and inevitable conclusions. And there is something troubling and melancholic about that. And again, Doctor Who very beautifully says, well, it's okay, and you just have to get used to it, and that's what happens. Whoa. But it is something that makes you very introspective, and introspection is no bad thing, because it makes you appreciate what you've had and not worry too much about what's to come, because it's inevitable that it's to come. But it's a sort of happy sadness, again, it's a sort of forlorn melancholic resignation that isn't, you don't have to be miserable about if you don't want to be, but it's certainly food for thought.
Also, writing-wise, I wanted to pick up on Mickey's character arc. In the first season, he'd very much been portrayed as Mickey the idiot, and this was the start of his transformation from his realization that, oh my god, I'm the tin dog, to going, actually, you know what, I want in this, so can I come in the TARDIS? And we see that developing over the next few episodes.
Yes, that's a good choice, and because I really didn't really like Mickey in certainly in Rose. It was one of the things. It was one of the aspects that I had some worry about, and I read interviews with Noel Clarke subsequently where he said he realised he was playing it in a fashion he wouldn't play had he had his time again. And I think Mickey's transformation from annoying character to character you rooted for, it's not always my favourite performance, I have to say. I think he does some things better than others. But I think he's great in School Reunion. A bit like John Levine, he's very good at being sort of lovable and hapless. And I think he gets some really choice lines. And also, he's not just lovable and hapless because he's absolutely got Rose and Sarah Jane's number in terms of their relationship and all of that. So he's not just dopey. He has a different skill set and a different intuition and insight, and that's good writing, because he's not passive, and he's not entirely daft, and he grows and goes on a journey, and is brave enough to say, right, I want to come. And I think that's good, because also there is the danger of he kind of slightly highlights that Rose and the Doctor are getting a bit too big for their boots as well, which means the show's not unaware of that dynamic, which I think is interesting too.
After that, I think I want to make a mention of Murray Gold's music. Just generally, love Murray Gold's music. He was emblematic of the entire New Who era for such a long time, and at this point, I'm really looking forward to seeing what he comes up with for Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson and that. So kudos to him. So that's 4.
Well, that's dated us, hasn't it? He's looking forward to see. Well, he's done it. He's even done a finale. He's done a valedictory score for Ncuti Gatwa between you recording this and me responding to you, Paul. But also, it means that I was right. Unless he now chooses Kenny, to kill Kenny and choose other drinks are available, to choose the music, even though because that score in particular is one that I like, even though I like all of Murray Gold's stuff, but I wanted to stick up for that one because it's not one we know particularly well, because it doesn't even have a name. It's not on the soundtrack CD. It could be called Exciting Computer Close-Ups. It'd be called the Scasis Paradigm, wouldn't it? But yeah, so I'm glad because that's really the first point I've got, which means I'm nowhere near winning this one, which is fine.
My 5th thing, without this episode, we wouldn't have the Sarah Jane Adventures. I love the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's a brilliant show. I'm rewatching it at the moment. The Sarah Jane Adventures gave us, a whole new lease of life for the character of Sarah Jane Smith, but also it introduced us to a whole new generation of characters, and indeed a whole new generation of actors. Because without the Sarah Jane Adventures, we wouldn't have such fantastic actors like Anjali Mahindra now, who is just a massive star. So that is my 5th thing. The Sarah Jane Adventures spinning out of School Reunion. I really hope you've enjoyed this. Like I say, as much as I did. It's such a fun episode, isn't it, Toby? So much fun.
Yes, it is. Well, I mean, it's funny though, because I don't think fun first when I think about it. I think joy and tears and it was such a time to be alive. It just felt, because as I say, it wasn't an episode I'd been particularly looking forward to. I thought I'd get the kick of going, well, yeah, it's but I still had the eye on what other people thought. It's the return of my things, and that'll be all right for me. But I'm not that bothered because I've seen the 5 Doctors and I've got them all on DVD. So, and I also worried how, things that were good in the 70s don't always work in the modern era. So I was worried whether Sarah Elizabeth Sladen's acting style would work in the modern day and all that. And of course, it's all fine and brilliant and actually better than I expected. So, and I love the Sarah Jane Adventures too. I have to say I preferred it to Torchwood, and I think it's very much how I kind of like my Doctor Who spin-offs, even though if you'd asked me if I wanted an adult Doctor Who spin-off, and there's plenty to enjoy in Torchwood, but I think Sarah Jane's balance was right. And this was the time. Doctor Who, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Torchwood, episodes like this, totally Doctor Who Confidential. I mean, my goodness, we'd never had it so good. And it was definitely a golden age, and as they've shown, it's been quite difficult because the landscape has changed and various other factors that I'm sure will be discussed and debated, and I don't need to go into those now. But it's a stark reminder of just how well everything went. I mean, good Lord. It truly was a golden age, and I love the run of Tooth and Claw, School Reunion, Girl in the Fireplace. They're 3 10 out of 10s for me, really, and they all have faults, but for some reason they all land in a way that means I forgive them their faults. I love this episode. Whenever I think about it, I think, yeah, it's, of course, headline news, Sarah Jane K9 and the school backdrop, and then I watch it and just remember how good every single element of it is, and they really come together rather beautifully. And I've really enjoyed revisiting it with Paul. Paul has some things to plug, so let's hear what those are.
Well, there we go. That's it. I'm all done and dusted. If you want to find me, you can look me up on all the social medias. I am at Auton Scouser, AUTONSCOUSER, and you can also look up the podcast that I'm part of, which is Attack of the 50-Foot Nerds. So we do live shows, we do recordings. Come and see us live and check us out wherever you listen to this podcast, because I'm sure you'll be able to find us there as well. Back over to you, Toby.
Well, thank you, Paul. Yes, do check out all his stuff. He's a good fellow, and he's a very good interviewer, broadcaster, and all the sorts of stuff that he does. And look, if you want to feel old, so Lucinda Dryzek, who plays Melissa in School Reunion, was what, 15 when she did Doctor Who? And she's now 33. 33. Oh, my goodness. So a lot of water under the bridge there for all of those kids. And I know that Clem Tibber, who, as I say, was already a bit grown up when he did that film with my ex-wife shortly afterwards, was already making noises apparently about he didn't really want to do acting very more, and he'd had a lot of things land in his lap acting wise, and the novelty had worn off fairly quickly. So I was like, wow, he's talking like a veteran, and he's been younger than me twice. Ha 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 ha. And he hasn't done anything for a while, so I wonder if he did decide to do something far more sensible. Whereas I think I'm gonna die with my boots on. I'm gonna keep doing this sort of thing until I drop. But that's a story for another day. But anyway, I hope you liked the reunion at the school. It's a story that means a lot for me, because actually I wouldn't be here doing this without it, because it was such an important component of Moths ate my Doctor Who scarf, and so that's why I've chosen it to be here as we approach 100 happy times and places, because it's a particularly special one for me, and I hope you've enjoyed reminiscing, because, well, I mean, you can't go back, but as this story proves, and yet as a Doctor Who fan we always can, because there will always be a part of us that's the age we were when we first saw these episodes, and I think that's very, very moving. So I'm not going to try and contrive a joke or a bon mot that ties it all together. I just think I'll say, yeah, I'm very moved by this one. Take care. Thanks for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydoke, and my special guest, Paul Griggs, who can be found at the Attack of the 50-Foot Nerds podcast. Do check it out. I'm grateful to Paul and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Andrew and Lisa, Kat Armitage, John Arnold, Kevin Ashelford, Luke Atkins, James Bell, David Bickley, Gary Byrne, Robin Bland, Robbie C, Alex Cafejoglu, Paul Carnahan, Paul Carrington, Andy Case, Ian Clark, John Curley, Mark Dakin, Rob Dawson, John Elledge, Mark Findlay Smith, Joe Ford, Gary Gillett, Paul Goodridge, Lisa C. Greco, David Green, Fraser Gregory, Paul Gregory, Michael Harvey, Dave Hoskin, Richie Howarth, Robert Jewell, Paul Jones, Andrew Jordan, Andrew Jolly, Christopher Joyce, Jess Jerkovic, Rick King Byatt, Andy Kitching, Ashley Knight, Clive Lewis, James Lark, and Ruben Herpendahl. The music is by Dave Gates and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name read out on the credits, then you can go to patreon.com/Toby Haydock and sign up for as little as £3 a month, and you get all sorts of goodies there, including advance releases, behind-the-scenes looks at my various DVD and Blu-ray extravaganzas, pictures of my dog, exclusive interviews, bonus content, monthly AMAs, and all sorts of other things. And there's a lovely community there who also, of course, get to put their comments on the episodes, which get read out during Happy Times and Places. If you can't if you can't abide the idea of having notifications from me pop up every few days telling you what I've dressed up, tarted up and thrown into cyberspace for your delight and delectation, but want to support in some other way, you can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock and pretend to buy me a coffee. But it's just a way of supporting a self-employed creator who puts stuff out there which essentially for free, and is reliant on tips that we can contrive in different sorts of ways in cyberspace, now that these things aren't sort of sold or bought or anything like that. But if you don't have the means or inclination to do anything financial, which is perfectly understandable, because we have lots of things that need spending money on, and a bloke talking and stumbling around as I'm doing now shouldn't be high on anybody's list. But what you can do that costs you nothing is to go to YouTube and Patreon and Apple and Spotify and all the places, anywhere that you can get this kind of stuff, and this stuff in particular, and give it thumbs up, give it 5 stars, give it a few lines of review. All that stuff really, really helps. And you can follow me on social media. I'm at Toby Haydock and at Haydock Podcasts on Twitter. I am at toby.haydock on Instagram. I've got a Facebook page, and I'm on Blue Sky as well. So I'm a bit of a tart. I haven't started sashaying alluringly on TikTok yet, but I think that might be a bit much for everybody. But anywhere else, grab me. And there we go. So that's the end of that one. A very special episode to me, but it's been quite a long one, and so I think we can probably leave it there. But time, eh? Paul recorded his bit before we'd seen Shooty Get Wire, and I recorded this once he'd gone. It just goes to show how fleeting it all is. We got old, folks. We got old.